All right. Welcome to another week. It's been a great week. We got a lot of good articles this week.
You're watching it on your TV. Always trying to improve our setup, and there we go. Mute yourself if you would. There we go.
All right. Now that was a little bit strange. More than just a little bit strange. Okay. So what's had a lot of good articles this week. That's where I was starting off. And we had, in fact, we had such good articles. I've got 4 different things to talk about tonight. And I believe all of them came from articles that were submitted during the current events. So I'm excited to be able to do that because it means that you're finding great stuff to talk about and great stuff for me to amplify that's in the current worldview. And so what I'd like to talk about first is an article that popped up here. Let me pop it up here. It's this block article that says Casper Labs did a survey, and they surveyed 603 or 604, something like that, enterprises, and 90% of them said that they were going to be implementing some sort of blockchain project. Or was already in the process of implementing a blockchain project. So that is really cool. And as I go down here, it said basically for businesses that are already using blockchain technology, security and copy protection were cited as the main benefits. Okay. In IT-based operations, respondents were using blockchain for internal workflows, supply chain efficiency, and software development. Well, we know that supply chain efficiency is an incredible benefit of blockchain. We already have examined and seen that in various examples. So the interesting one to me was the software development. We know that it can be used as a governance tool, that governance can be embedded in a blockchain while you're developing the blockchain. It could also, of course, be developed as a governance tool by itself to manage other projects. So that's way cool to see that mentioned in an article. And then internal workflows kind of goes along with that governance thing, because you can write smart contracts also with a blockchain and maintain a workflow. This person approves it, then it goes on to the next person for approval and the next person for approval. So workflows can also be automated quite easily on a blockchain. So that's interesting that those 3 are the ones that this Casper survey picked up, because we don't generally see the software development and internal workflows piece of it. So what I'd like to talk about, though, is something that I teach in the master's class. And I thought, since this article was brought up, it was so closely allied to what we teach in the second week of the master's blockchain class. So I want to flip to a PowerPoint presentation here and just basically go over this article by Finn Strathern. Finn Strathern is the one that wrote the article for the block. I'm very familiar with Finn's writings. He is not technically proficient in blockchain. So there were a lot in that article that indicated that, of course, he wasn't all that proficient. Remember, every time a blockchain article is written and they refer to cryptocurrencies taking a large dive, but it hasn't affected the enthusiasm for blockchain, well, it just means that they haven't yet got to the point of being able to divide the two in their mind, that cryptocurrencies are one flavor of the industry, but blockchain for business is a whole different flavor and a different animal. And Finn is probably considered, a jack of all trades, master of none. In other words, he writes on a broad range of topics. So He does bring up some good information, though I've never seen him take the missteps that the Motley Fool does. But Finn has his shortcomings. So I'd like to kind of add to what he says in the respect that businesses are implementing very, very quickly and at a high rate, but businesses don't always implement the way you think they are. Okay? They're talking big games a lot of times, and they're talking about this brand new technology where they can see and work with this new tech and increase security and everything that goes with the positives of blockchain. But a lot of times there's about 4 different categories that they end up falling into that are considered what they call blockchain incomplete solutions, or blockchain solutions that really don't encompass all of the features of a blockchain. And let me show you for an example. Some of them are just FOMO. They want to implement a blockchain because it's a fear of missing out. They want to be able to say that they've implemented a blockchain, but they implement a blockchain in a way that it just replaces what a database could do. It only replaces what a relational database could have easily done, probably at half the cost or less. There aren't any outside participants outside their corporation. They might be using it just to link up a bunch of outlying offices or something so that they'd have some distribution, but all the data is kept in a central location. And essentially, it's no better than what their IT department could have done without even learning blockchain at all. So those fall in the FOMO camp, the fear of missing out camp. They kind of just want to get their toes wet, but they really don't want to dive into the pool. The next one, and my voice is cracking, but the next one is the Trojan horse implementation. Now, the Trojan horse implementation is one where a company decides that they want maybe their supply chain to get involved with blockchain, but they want their supply chain to feed all of their data to them. So the data is all held by the owner of the enterprise, and they just require all their participants, oh, by the way, there's this software you need to add to your arsenal in order to do business with us. It's kind of like telling them that they have to be part of their same enterprise resource planning system or their supply chain management system, kind of like injecting themselves into an SAP system or other larger ERP system. But the data is all held by the one company. The data is all the benefit of the one company. It's not distributed. It's not left so that the company keeps their proprietary data. They're just giving their proprietary data a lot of times to the company that holds the blockchain. So this is another situation where an SAP system, a regular ERP system, supply chain management system possibly could have been used to just as good of efficiency and probably cheaper because they wouldn't have had to learn a brand new technology. So that's the Trojan horse. Now, these are the two that are at the lower end of blockchain implementations. And I would venture to bet that when they come up with a 90% figure of companies that are implementing a blockchain, that a good number of them are just going to be FOMO or Trojan horse. They're just going to be tiptoeing into the water to say that they've been there and done that, for stockholder purposes, whatever. Now, you get a little bit farther into the pool, and maybe wading into the shallow end, when you apply a solution to a problem that blockchain seems to be a good fit for, and that has enough benefits to the corporation to make it viable. So there's an opportunity to try out this brand new technology to solve this problem. And it's probably a good fit to solve this problem, but they never get into the decentralized aspect of the blockchain and really broaden it out to other competitors to use and to fully create nodes that are decentralized and to the far-flung areas of the U.S. or of the world. It just never develops into anything that is, truly viable. Australia was trying to replace their thing called CHESS, CHESS, which stood for their system of managing their stock market and transaction data. They tried for about 3 years and finally, did away with the project because it just wasn't going anywhere. Now that would have been what they call an opportunistic solution, because it was designed right from the get-go to benefit the exchange itself and never to really benefit other exchanges or other places of business, other than the fact that they would just link into it. But the exchange itself would just track all of their data, and it would be just this blockchain searching for a viable solution to solve. And so those are opportunistic solutions. They have a real problem. They could probably make good money if efficiencies if they implemented a blockchain, and they may or may not be successful in accomplishing that. Now, there's a next thing that gets a little bit closer. It's called an evolutionary solution. These are implementations that when they first design it, they design it with the idea that it's going to be centralized, but that it has the option to become decentralized later. So it starts with centralization. Now, one example of this is TradeLens. TradeLens was developed with IBM and Maersk as pretty much a centralized evolutionary solution. They worked very hard after they got it up and running to get other people to get involved. Their major competitor would not even consider it. Hapag-Lloyd was their major competitor, and they dragged their feet for over 2 years before they actually joined the TradeLens group. But that was only after about 5 other companies actually joined TradeLens and began to get a more of decentralized system, so that they could then feel more comfortable that they weren't just giving all their data as though it were a Trojan horse to Maersk. So when Hapag-Lloyd joined it, then a lot of other companies joined it, and there were 16 total companies before they shut down the TradeLens blockchain just a few months ago. So basically what I wanted to say is, yes, there are probably companies out there, 90% of them saying, hey, we're implementing a blockchain solution. Some of it's going to be PR. Some of it's just going to be putting your toe in the water. Some of them's just going to be kind of wading out into the shallow end of the pool. But very few of those, when from a company standpoint, are really saying, yes, we've dove into the deep end of the pool, and all of these other companies have joined with us to make a full featured and decentralized solution, which blockchain is meant to become. So, Finn Strathern, you did a good job bringing up a good subject, but I just wanted to take it a little bit further and show you what all the phases are in getting a blockchain solution actually implemented. Okay? All right. So, Robert,
what's up?
Let's move on to our next subject. Yeah. Do we have any questions that have popped up, Robert? Are you watching the note? I know Seth had some questions. Has Seth been able to join yet?
Seth is here. We haven't seen any questions yet.
Seth, you said you had some questions, so once you post them in the chat window, he had some questions about this last week's material, and I'll be glad to answer them as soon as I know what they are. What is our next topic? The insurance one?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's look at the insurance industry for a moment. Okay, so I put this one in a Word document so I could do some highlighting, and let's squeeze this down so that it comes over here and fits our window here. All right. And we don't need the navigation pane, do we? Alrighty. So this article was submitted. Is blockchain finally coming for the insurance industry? I'm interested, in the wording of that. It's like blockchain is this monster and it's going to gobble up the insurance industry next. Well, okay, not really. So, having been in the insurance industry in a prior life of mine, you sold policies to people, and when somebody wants to buy a homeowner's policy, it's a basic form of a policy. Every single company under the sun sells the same policy form. They have to go through regulators to get it approved. If the company wants to tweak it from this basic form, they have to get any tweaks approved. The basic form that's put out by the Insurance Underwriters Association is accepted within the boundaries of each state. But if a particular company wants to modify it, they have to get that approved. So you've got a basic form. If you buy an auto insurance policy, the liability is a basic form. The comprehensive is a basic format. All of these little pieces of all these contracts are just perfect for a blockchain in a smart contract. So when they say, is it going to come? Is blockchain going to finally come and be of use in the insurance industry? I really, really hope so, because it could gain a lot of efficiencies in any way. In fact, all of the amendments and addendums that Farmers Insurance might add, or Safeco Insurance might add, or any one of the number of other insurances, Geico or Travelers, or all of those companies that insure cars and homes and businesses, or small businesses at least, all of those are just perfect, literally, for a blockchain. And so in this article, it says, what are the benefits to the insurance industry? Well, many insurers are taking interest in blockchain technology to leverage real-time data to provide faster, cheaper solutions. And according to Daly, who said there would be significant benefits to using blockchain, and 3 of those are listed here. Now, we know about transparency. A blockchain is very transparent. If you have authorization to look at the data, in other words, you have your private key to see the data that applies to you, you very easily can see all the information there. For privacy concerns, if you don't have the right private key or account, if it's a permissioned blockchain, in other words, they dole out the private keys but only give private keys only to those people who are maybe policyholders for that matter, you can see all the data. You can see all the transactions that happen if you have to file a claim. You would be able to go in and log into your account and see all the activity that pertained to your smart contract. So let's say I have an auto policy and I get into an accident, somebody runs a red light or something, smacks into me. They are liable for paying the damages to me. If they don't have insurance, they're going to pay under my uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist coverage, which is another smart contract, could be another smart contract. If they are fully insured, they're going to be paying for, hopefully, my medical bills if they sent me to the hospital, and I'd be able to see the status of the repairs, or whether they've totaled the car, or what transactions are taking place. Incredible transparency that you can see at a moment's notice once the next piece of the transaction actually happens. The next is accurate risk rating. Yes, from an actuarial standpoint, insurance is very hard to get good data for. But if you've got all your data in the blockchain, if the blockchain knows exactly from an insurance company standpoint exactly what you've paid on every little piece of every policy, you're going to be able to pull that data up. And when somebody comes that wants that particular piece of a policy and has these particular conditions and all the things that actuarial and statistical type people look at, they're going to be able to access that data and get all that information to give you the best rate possible. Then task automation. Smart contracts just take care of a lot of business all on their own. All the people have to do, from the adjusters to the agent to the customer, is interact with those smart contracts to either pay the bills, or the adjuster to pay the claim, or the policy underwriter to issue the policy. On and on and on it goes. All of this touch labor that becomes incredibly paper intensive in an old iteration of insurance gets done away with. And if there can be certain consortiums of blockchains where groups of companies join a blockchain that encompass several companies, the optimization efforts could be incredible. And so, yes, I hope blockchain gets into the insurance business. It would have made my life a whole lot easier as an insurance agent in my prior life. So I hope it gets there. And I hope you have enjoyed that little summary of what it can do for the insurance industry. All right, Robert, do we have a question or two from Seth? There we go. He says, I watched the videos from this week's assignments and it cleared things up. Well, that's what they're for. Good. I'm glad that helped. Good. But if you come up with questions, please be sure to join in. Hey, Derek, thanks for coming. I appreciate seeing you. All right. I don't see any other questions. So what I'd like to do is just take a real quick break. You might notice my voice is a little bit raspy, so I'm going to get a little bit of a drink here and of soda, and come right back in about 2.5 minutes, okay? All right. I said 2.5 minutes and I took a little longer. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll get it up and going. I didn't see any questions pop up in the chat window, so I'll go ahead and talk about the boring subject of accounting. Okay? Now, understandably, and somebody else submitted this article as well, but recognizing the simple fact that blockchain is a ledger, and the term ledgers came from the accounting side of the business of managing a business. So if it's a distributed ledger, all that much the better. In fact, this particular article, this PDF file was linked in the article. So when you look at this PDF file, if you go back and look at the article, you'll see, and I'll post the article at the bottom of the of each video that we cut out of this. If you look at in the article, you'll see the link to this PDF. So as I read through this, it was really good. It says, blockchain is fundamentally an accounting system, an accounting technology, it says. In this paper, we'll describe the technology and its likely impact on business, and in particular, the accounting profession. And I thought, wow, that is really quite a statement for the accounting people in our midst. Those nerds that sit at a desk and count beans all day long. Can you tell I've been a finance person all day long? We just like to make fun of accountants. So, especially us that make finance systems that try to manage those beans for those bean counters. So here we have a system, and what they've basically said here is the key features of blockchain fit what accountants think is just perfect life. First, propagation. There are many copies of blockchain ledger, so no master copy. Now, what they would like the most is the fact that they can put it in several places so it doesn't get lost. Accountants don't like to lose things, especially money. So all participants have access to a full copy of the ledger, and all copies are identical and equivalent. So whether you're talking about pieces of a company that are disparate, and let's say that you've got a headquarters in the US and a satellite office in Ireland or Scotland or Europe or Africa, anywhere, everyone has a full, complete copy of that ledger. And if accountants love that, they've got a quick and easy access to the data. Once updates are made, no one party has control of the ledger. New transactions can be posted quickly, and they propagate out to all the residents. So if I'm here in Ireland, no, I'm not in Ireland, I wish I were, but for a visit anyway. If my satellite office in Ireland posts a transaction because they did some business, it posts immediately to their ledger and then propagates to the rest of the world. Okay, permanence. We've talked about the immutability of a blockchain that is constantly being added to with cryptography to make sure that each block that's put together is never tampered with. And once you have one block after another, you end up with a situation where all of these blocks become immutable because you have to literally go and change. If you change the data in one block, you've got to then recalculate all the cryptography and the Merkle trees and all that information for each connecting block going forward. After a while, that just becomes impossible. We don't have computers that can do that. And we don't have computers that, if you've got 100 copies of it spread around the world, they can make sure that all of their changes propagate quickly to all of the other locations before the nefarious act gets caught. So, permanence. Past transactions cannot be edited without the consent of the majority, meaning that the blockchain records are permanent. In other words, if somebody wanted to change it, you'd have to get permission of the majority, and the majority will say, wait a minute, we're not supposed to be changing accounting things. I get questions all the time. Well, can we go back and change actuals? Wait a minute. Actuals are actuals. If you spent the money, you spent the money. Oh, but it wasn't quite right. What do you mean it wasn't quite right? You spent $5. You spent it on that day. That should stay that way and be permanent. Okay, the entire ledger is stored by each participant and now can be inspected and verified. The issue with permanence is the situation where, an Enron type of entity that did those horrible accounting tricks to make sure that they were never discovered before they went bankrupt. In other words, all of the corrupt executives sold off all their stock while convincing everybody else that the company was totally viable and convincing Wall Street that they were just the beautifully run company that always made profits. And when the house of cards started falling, all the executives had already sold their stock and taken all the profits and left all of the company, the people in the company holding the bag, because they had also convinced all the company that you gotta buy our stock. So everybody's 401k, everybody's retirement funds were all bought into the stock as well. And it's those kind of accounting tricks that accountants really, really like to have permanent on a blockchain, so you can see all those transactions that happen. So the next thing is programmability. Some blockchains allow for program code. Well, not some, all do, to be stored on them. In other words, smart contracts, as well as the ledger entries. Automatic journal entries that can execute automatically when triggered. There's those smart contracts. So the smart contracts, I work at Boeing, and Boeing is huge. We did over 60 billion last year, and last year for almost half the year we didn't deliver any 787s, and we just barely started getting our 737s started being delivered, but we still did $60 billion worth of business. Now, that's not the biggest company in the world by any stretch, but we've got $60 billion flowing through our coffers. Income coming in, expenses going out, and for the government especially, in our military side of the business, the government needs to know how much money was spent on the widgets that they buy, and they want to come and audit that all the time. Well, those smart contracts could be employed to do all the processing that happens every single night in our current accounting system. Now, our current accounting system is a relational database underlying that, but that accounting system has to push the dollars and into the various accounts during the night. In other words, something is expensed and it goes to this particular contract. Or an employee in the payroll comes in and payroll is paid out, but certain pieces of all that payroll have to be pushed to their various different contracts. And all of those contracts need to be able to show the proper expenses at the end of the day when the government wants to come audit it. And frankly, for the business commercial side, the Boeing commercial airplanes, on that side, they still need to have all of the dollars in the appropriate places for the 787 to show whether it's profitable, or the 767 or whatever plane is profitable. So all of that programmability in the smart contracts would enable very, very quickly, microtransactions that could be done during the day instead of all being done overnight, which would be an incredible benefit, because our systems just crank and crank and crank, and we have to keep optimizing them, because as we get to be a bigger and bigger company, we tend to start outgrowing the software that we have put in place. And the smart contracts being able to grow with and do those microtransactions would be a huge, huge benefit. So, would blockchain benefit the accounting structure within a company? Absolutely. It would simplify my task in building finance systems a lot, and it would easily be able to benefit all of the business intelligence systems that have to pull data from it. Much cleaner data coming from that kind of a system than from the relational systems that people tinker and toy with, constantly readjusting journal entries and readjusting all the information underlying. It's kind of like trying to pick up Jello in your hand and toss it somewhere. It's just terrible sometimes to try to nail down exactly what happened. So I hope you enjoyed this explanation, and we could probably move on to our next subject. Any questions? This is a quiet group. I didn't start with a Kahoot this time. I didn't warm up the audience this time. Obviously, needed to warm up the audience and do a Kahoot next time.
I did want to comment that your Enron example is now a 20-year-old example.
Oh gosh, are you trying to remind me again that some of my students weren't even born then?
You might need to give more context clues next time.
Okay, let's take a quick survey. How many of you... yeah. Okay, one of them remembers Enron. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Enron. If you stay in the IT business, you'll hear of SOX requirements. And SOX came from Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes was a senator and Oxley was a senator. And they got together to create this wicked bunch of legislation to try to prevent any more Enron issues from taking place. And I have hated those two senators ever since they wrote the stupid thing, because it creates a lot of work for IT and a lot of work for accounting and a lot of work for business. So you'll remember SOX, and you'll remember the Enron story I just told when SOX comes up in your next IT audit that you have to have. All right. Are we ready to go on to the next subject?
I think
Justin says there's no questions, so he's speaking for the group, I'm sure. I was today years old. Okay, Danny, want to try that again? How old were you? Finding out about...
Today, as in this is the first time.
Oh.
Danny's ever heard of Enron.
Danny, that's the first time you've ever heard of it. Okay. Very good. Okay, let's pull up the next one. And the next one is by far the best. Now, how they got this particular name, I'll never figure out. Gluptiba? Okay, fine. My computer must be overworked because it's halting. My mouse is halting. Okay. So, the next... Okay, so being 43, you would remember it because you were in your 20s when it happened. Okay, let's talk about the threat analysis group from Google, because that's where this story starts, although the article that was actually presented, the article actually talked about today's episode of the Gluptiba virus, or I don't even know what to call it. It's a nefarious set of malware. That's what it is. It's malware. So basically, this article was written in December 2021 when Google basically made a huge hit on disabling at least the majority of Gluptiba, and was able to do it. It said Google, I've highlighted this area here. I've highlighted the area here. It says Google has taken action to disrupt the operations of Gluptiba, a multi-component botnet targeting Windows computers. We believe this action will have a significant impact on Gluptiba's operations. However, the operators of Gluptiba are likely to attempt to regain control of the botnet using a backup command and control mechanism that uses data encoded on the Bitcoin blockchain. Gluptiba is known to steal user credentials and cookies, mine cryptocurrencies on infected hosts, deploy and operate proxy components targeting Windows systems and IoT devices. TAG, or the Threat Analysis Group, has observed the botnet targeting victims worldwide, including the US, India, Brazil, and Southeast Asia. So basically what it identified is, a typical bot that would go in and try to grab credentials. This one specifically, though, targeted blockchains, which I thought was interesting that you found this particular one, because I had never heard of a bot. I had never heard of a piece of malware that attacked specifically blockchains, and specifically this one attacked Bitcoin in particular. So attacking Bitcoin in particular, it actually embedded itself enough so that once they got their C2 servers, their command and control servers, back up and operational, they could retrieve data from the Bitcoin blockchain and retrieve the addresses to go back after again to try to drain accounts of account holders and such that they'd acquired through infecting Windows computer systems. So it was quite significant. It says, this past year, TAG has been collaborating with Google's cybercrime investigation group to disrupt Glebtiba activity involving Google services. We've terminated around 63 million Google Docs observed to have distributed Glebtiba, 1,183 Google accounts, 908 cloud projects, and 870 Google ads ad accounts associated with distribution. Furthermore, 3.5 million users were warned before downloading a malicious file through Google Safe Browsing warnings. Wow, that was pretty significant. Finding 6.3 million Google Docs that when people would open them had the code embedded in them, so that when the people opened it, it would infect the host and their system. That's pretty big. So Google is alleging violations under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or we usually know that as RICO, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, the Lanham Act, and tortuous inference of business relationships and unjust enrichment. While these actions may not completely stop Glebtiba, TAG estimates that combined efforts will materially affect the actors' ability to conduct future operations. So here is the situation now. They basically they're playing whack-a-mole, it looks like. They whacked the mole back in 2021, but they also said in this 2021 article that they had a C2 backup mechanism. That C2 backup mechanism, of course, was embedding the code in the Bitcoin blockchain so that they could retrieve it later when they got their command and control systems back up and running. So let's take a look at the next article. And the next article, this is the one that was actually submitted to the class, okay? And basically, it tells today's episode of what's happening with this particular piece of malware. I like the graphic. It kind of gives an idea. So basically, has sprung back into action, infecting devices worldwide after its operation was disrupted by Google almost a year ago. And so this is where I went and tracked down the article by Google back in 2021. This article was written by Nozomi. The blockchain transactions are being linked and reverse engineered back to Glebtiba samples again. And so the data basically is hiding in the blockchain, and you've got these addresses, and if any transactions happen on these addresses, the Glebtiba blockchain just takes the coins. So even though you send to a particular wallet, if your wallet is tied to one of the addresses that this malware has within its command and control structure, it would be able to intercept those transactions and divert them to a different account. So it continues to thrive. Unfortunately, it'll continue to thrive until it finally is able to be permanently destroyed. And it's probably going to be difficult to permanently destroy it. I know your antivirus on your desktop is going to be looking for it, but if you open up a document that directly installs it on your computer, that could be a really, really big challenge. Seems like a smart exploit of the shared ledger. Absolutely. Very smart exploit of it. And obviously it's, I hate to say that it's just going to be a whack-a-mole exercise, but boy, they have, knocked it down pretty well, hardy in 2001, and here it is, back in 2023. So here we go again. This article was actually written in December 2022, so they were about a year apart. Okay, so be careful. Open documents from trusted sources. Make sure that you're not, going and downloading from sources that you don't really trust, and make sure your software, especially your operating system, is well up to date, so that those that have been trying to get rid of this, you can avail yourself of the work that they've done as best as possible. Okay, and that pretty much ends that topic. So never tell a hacker what they can't do, because they'll find a way. Absolutely. When I was programming in my early years, my wife would end up being my tester a lot of times, and she'd say, Rick, when you program that, it would really be easier for the user to see it this way or have it done this way. And I said, dear, it just can't be done. He said, wait a minute. You told me that you tell the computer what to do, right? Yes, dear. Okay. And so I'd go figure out a way to program it. And basically that's the way hackers are. You tell them you can't do it, and you just issued a challenge for them to go figure out how to do it. And that's exactly, what was said there. Who is Vertigo 24? So I can use a name. Do you remember?
No, off the top of my head, no.
Vertigo 724. But thank you for that comment. That's exactly true. Mike. Okay. Thanks, Mike. So is there anything else that any... What? Justin just told me that it was Mike, and Mike told me it was Mike. Okay, that's what that is. Justin just trying to confuse me. I've got two Justins in this class too, by the way, which makes it interesting. Any questions before we call it a night and go on and do obviously some more fun things? Okay. He types faster. Okay, very good. Well, if nobody has any questions, no, Justin being helpful. Robert, well, how about if you call for your just a last roll call, and we'll call it a night. So if you'll just write one more time that everybody's here and say goodbye, and we'll see you next week.